Good morning, everybody entering the room. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to wait a few more minutes because it will take a long time for everybody to get in the room. And we understand we have over 200 people registered today. So we need to give them a little bit of time to grab some coffee, grab a comfy chair and enter the room. So welcome, everybody. I see the numbers coming up. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you are. Please say hi and introduce yourselves in the chat. We will be waiting just a couple of minutes to let everybody in the room because we have over 200 people joining today. And I know why. It's because we've got some amazing speakers, some amazing discussions to have. And I know people will be joining us from all over the world, which is most exciting when we get that kind of diversity in the room to enrich the discussions in the chat. So welcome. And we're getting people already introducing themselves in the chat. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good evening. Good mornings and good evenings. Good afternoons as well. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is a Midwives in Focus webinar supported by Nursing Now. And today we're going to be exploring professional identity, strong midwifery leadership and professional representations of midwifery from around the world. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening. We have some amazing speakers with us today and people who are joining in the webinar to host some discussions later and sharing their insights in practice and research and policy. But first of all, I wanted to start with some introductions, if that's okay. So my name is Dr. Sally Pizarro. I'm the lead for Midwives in Focus, and I'm also the lead for this project we've been doing on midwifery leadership, professional identity and representations of midwifery around the world. So it's really exciting to have you with us today. And I'm going to do some introductions, or rather I'm going to let people introduce themselves because they always give themselves such a better kind of rounded view of what they do and who they are. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Dr. Rafat Jan, who's in the room. Rafat, if you could just unmute and just say hello and welcome to everybody.
Hello, how are you? I'm from Pakistan and so excited to see that right now many midwives are present from around the world. Welcome. Thank you.
Excellent to have such a smiling face as well. Always welcoming. Thank you very much for that. Then we also have Gila Zabib. Gila, are you there?
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good middle of the night, wherever you in the night shift. I love being in rooms of midwives on a global scale. It is an honor to be here. And it's so exciting to see all of you.
Thank you very much. We also should have Sarah Bays with us, Professor Sarah Bays, but she's running a little bit late and hopefully she will join us later on the session. But if I introduce next our keynote speaker, Fran McConville, I'll let Fran introduce herself and then we'll go straight into her keynote, which I'm really excited for today. I'm very grateful for Fran being here. So welcome, Fran McConville, and thank you very much for being here. We look forward to your keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally, and I'm delighted to be here with this Midwives in Focus, and it's just so timely, and I'll mention a few things about why this is so timely in the few slides that I'm going to share. But just to say, from WHO, we are just 100% behind you all. Our DG loves you. As you know, he thinks that midwives are just fantastic, and despite COVID and despite all the humanitarian circumstances that you work in, we so deeply appreciate the work that you do and all the evidence that we know says that how important midwives are to the health and well-being of mothers, newborns and their families. So this is a really serious issue, and it's not to be taken lightly, but midwives everywhere are really critical for all of us and for half the population and for our health. So Sally, shall I just go ahead and share my screen and just start? Because I know everyone.
Yes, please do. We've been eagerly awaiting to hear from you. Thank you.
Here we go. So let me just put it on full screen. There we are. Is that all right, Sally? Does that seem good now? So
we can see you. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So Sally asked me just to talk to this issue briefly on exploring professional identity, which is so critical. Are we midwives? Are we nurse midwives? Are we what? Strong midwifery leadership and representations around the world. And of course, the work that I do in WHO headquarters, where I'm based, having been working overseas many countries in East Africa, around Africa actually, and Southeast Asia and the Middle East for 32 years. I came to Geneva. And so understanding midwifery around the world is absolutely critical to us, and how we work. So first of all, last year was a very special year for midwifery. The previous year, of course, had been Year of the Nurse Midwife. And then last year, we launched the State of the World's Midwifery report. And in terms of leadership, this is absolutely critical. And you may remember, and many of you may not have seen this report, but please do go to it, especially if you're influencing and being a leader and you want to talk to people who make policy and decision making, finance people, ministry people, or even your own faculty, where you're working. But there were 4 recommendations that came out of the State of the World's Midwifery report. And this is invest in the health workforce, the planning, the management and regulation in that work environment. We've got to make sure midwives have a much better and enabling working environment that's about gender transformative work as well. So we can use these words about gender and power now very freely. Go to the report, it's all there. We must invest in high quality in education and training. We know that, but we have had a tendency to focus on curricula and turn out numbers rather than quality, and looking, as Rafat Jan is in Pakistan, at the whole picture and how does that fit and work across sectors. So a lot to be done there. Midwife-led improvements. Already we're talking midwifery leadership here. It's not for us as midwives to sit back and let others improve. We need to step up now, have that seat at the table. We need to lead the improvements that we want to see. And today, you may not be aware, but something called the Ockenden report is released in the UK, which is looking at 20 years of maternity care in a certain part of the UK and highlighting the really deep problems it's had. So even in the UK, I know we have a fantastic midwifery system here, and I'm always very proud and grateful to have been able to train and be educated as a midwife in the UK. We've still got to dig deep into the problems that we're finding, and we must continue to address them. It's a never-ending cycle of quality improvement. And that talks about as well midwife-led models of care. But finally, this 4th one is absolutely fantastic. And it's about midwifery leadership and governance. How do we manage ourselves, govern ourselves, run ourselves, and how do we lead? And what does that mean? And I know this is a lot about what Midwives in Focus are doing now. So at the same time last year, some of you will be aware that WHO launched at the World Health Assembly in May, the Global Strategic Directions for Nursing and Midwifery. Now, although that combines nursing and midwifery because it historically has been combined, it points out that midwifery is a distinct profession under the International Labour Organization. So we can use that as well. It is a distinct profession. So although we are combining in one report, it's not always the nurse midwife. In many countries it is, and that's up to the government to make their decision on what's best for them at that time in the transition to midwifery. So again, you see these 4 areas that came up: jobs, education repeats, leadership repeats, and service delivery, quality service delivery. So again, we've got to strengthen our government chief nursing midwifery officers. Those are the GCNMOs, very isolated, often without budget, without training, and really without ability to be supported to do the roles that they're in. We must support leadership all the way across and have leadership development programs. So 2 really key reports came out last year, both of which for the first time in the history of midwifery have leadership as one of their top 4 priorities. So we've never had an opportunity like this. Last point on this report is because it went through the World Health Assembly, it went through a process of endorsement by 193 countries, the member states that WHO is made up of. We're not an NGO or a separate organization. WHO is the ministries of health of all of our countries. And every single Ministry of Health endorsed this report. So wherever you come from, I can see people coming in from all around the world. Your Minister of Health has endorsed this report. So leadership is in his head, and it's a priority for your government to deliver on this, as well as education, jobs, and service delivery. So use that when you're talking to ministries, when you're leading. Say, but sir, you have, or madam, you have endorsed this, and bring this report up. You'll find it on the WHO website. So just one thing I want to touch on, because education was such a big issue, just to step back a little bit, in 2019, we worked, well, from 2016 to 2019, with Rafat and many others around the world, actually over 100 of you around the world. We had a series of global consultations looking at strengthening midwifery, and it's so big and so complex. We realized that education is the first step. Get your education right, and then things will fall out and into place from that. You have to do everything else as well. So this was the first report and step of actions actually agreed between UNFPA, UNICEF, WHO, which led it, and the ICM. So we're really pleased that, again, like SOMI and the SDNM, that we came together to agree on the action we would take. I won't go into this in detail, there isn't enough time, but we have a 7-step action plan. And instead of the midwife being in the middle, we put women and newborns coming out of the Lancet series. What do they need? This is how we need to work. We need to look at what they need and be the midwife that they need. And very interestingly, the first step was leadership. And that, again, often the first step was curriculum. And it still is sometimes in some discussion. So I won't go through all of these, but it's the first step of 7, looking at our leadership and policies, and then getting the right data and evidence on midwifery, not just maternal mortality, stillbirths, etc., but about midwifery. What do we know? And we're learning we don't know much about what's going on in countries. We need to have the support of the public, the doctors, women, the media. Then we need to get our education institutes updated. We're working on, this is a cycle, and make sure we have those good clinical mentors. Half of education institutes are not even near a clinical site. Get the faculty really up to speed on the latest recommendations and what's going on. Often the faculty, poor guys, they've been left for 30 years without any continuing professional development. Get your curricula done then, but you can see it's a small part of what really needs to be done. Educate and most importantly, monitor, evaluate, and that is a cycle. So leadership for education is absolutely critical, as it is for many other areas. Just before that, in 2016, we'd done a big survey on why can't midwives give the care that they want? A lot of criticism of midwives hitting and shouting at women, and it was becoming a bit of a blame culture. So we looked and we asked midwives, and I'm sure that Midwives in Focus will have the same problem. We thought we wouldn't get enough, and within a couple of weeks we had over 2,500 responses. We had to stop the survey, but this is what it found, is that midwives are facing, in terms of leadership, these socio-cultural barriers. Birth is women's work, is not always accepted as a career. It transgresses accepted gender roles. And midwives are very vulnerable still to physical and sexual assault. I'm just popping through these quickly. Economically, we're paid rubbish. You know, it just doesn't match the kind of work that we do. And professionally, this lack of investment in education and the power games that are played in this professional hierarchies is something that we can now really address through this leadership issue. So we experience a gender penalty. We're women. We have low social status in most countries, in fact, all countries. So we have to deal with that. Midwifery's become feminized. It's just women's work. You don't need to pay much for it. It's like cooking. You know, we've always looked after babies and mothers and stuff. So we experience this moral distress and burnout and the poor quality of care. So it's up to us now. We know what the issues are. How do we turn this around and lead ourselves? We cannot sit back and ask somebody else to change something like this. So we've got to address this gender inequality. So the question now for us, after we've had these big reports about leadership, countries all accepting we need midwifery leadership, how and why do we support countries to strengthen their midwifery leadership? And it's very interesting, nobody knows. There is no country that's done all this and knows what to do. There are no tools out there. There's no training manuals. We don't know. And we've done quite a lot of work to find out if anybody has these things. And we don't. ICM, WHO, UNFPA, many partners we've been asking. Now the why, if you look at this is somewhere in Southeast Asia, a woman in some kind of maternity ward. This is, we need leadership to stop this happening. It's not just going to happen because we want it to. So we have to take responsibility now with these big reports, these governments accepting that we take leadership and do something here. So the answer is ask midwives. I'm really pleased to hear that Midwives in Focus is asking midwives through their survey that you're going to be talking about. We're asking midwives, and we're asking them as well, how do they identify themselves as leaders? So across several countries, 5 at the moment, we are asking many midwives from the government, always we work through government as WHO, to find out what is the current state of midwifery leadership in their country? How can we assess leadership across the country at a national level? I'm not saying what is your individual leadership competency. I'm saying how is country A, B, and C? What is their leadership like? What are the gaps? Where can we support? Where can we finance? What education and training is needed? What do we need to change this picture into something very different? And do you already have some tools of guidance available for doing this? And we're finding out there are some small research projects in countries looking at leadership in the health system, for example, not specifically midwifery, but they're useful. So what we're doing at the moment, and you can see in contrast this lovely photograph from UNFPA actually in Bangladesh, when they started a really great leadership for midwifery program. And here you have a woman with a midwife and her companion at birth. So following the evidence, she's standing, she's walking. That's not what Bangladesh was like when I was there in 1984 at all. We're a different place. And that's because of what midwives have done. So we need to start with empowering midwives at country level to assess leadership. So we're looking in India, Pakistan, Malawi, Sierra Leone and Bolivia, and we are already developing a leadership tool through which to assess what's going on. So this is the first analysis of midwifery by midwifery leadership, and it builds upon a program that we ran in India during the height of COVID, and it was online, fabulous. I'll come back to that another day, but it was really extraordinary getting midwifery leaders to connect across such a big country. So that's where we are now in 5 countries, just beginning to develop a tool. This is draft. It will be published, and we really will circulate it for inputs, of course, before the 5 countries are finished. But one section is what kind of leadership roles are we looking at? There's 3 other sections that go with this. But just to highlight that midwives have political roles. There are midwives in government. There are midwife roles in service delivery, private and public, education, research, regulatory bodies, non-profit, all those fantastic NGOs and intergovernmental organizations, for-profit. We mustn't forget private sector often is more than 50% in many countries. Trade unions, professional associations, networks, societies. So when we're looking at leadership, it's not just about the midwife, it's about all of these issues in a country. And how does that come together, united, to support midwifery and really good quality midwives able to provide the care that women and newborn need. Now, just to let you know, we are developing this interprofessional midwifery education toolkit. It's not a pre-service course or a 3-year curriculum for direct entry. But what it does is it gives you access to all the WHO recommendations, guidance on a companion at birth, on stopping routine episiotomy, etc. And it takes us through facilitator guides and learner guides, antenatal childbirth, newborn, postnatal, sexual reproductive health. But we have these cross-cutting modules, a really lovely one coming on respectful care. But you'll see in the middle there, leadership. So we will be building this into a program where you can go, oh, there's some information. What can I do? What kind of activity can I do? I'm an educator or I'm a researcher. What can I do? How do I design a program? How do I implement? How do I monitor and evaluate if I'm in government? That kind of thing. So a lot of work going on there. Just wanted to highlight again from SOMI, and I'm coming to the end now. So SOMI in orange, the 4th recommendation, midwife-led improvements. And many of you, in some countries, particularly high-income countries, we are really pushing this idea, because the evidence is so good, on continuity of care. The same midwife or team of midwives through antenatal, childbirth, postnatal, and continued. And we know that that has a massive impact on the reduction, at least 24% reduction in preterm birth, much better outcomes for mothers, far less unnecessary intervention, and much better psychosocial health and bonding with baby, and less perinatal mental health problems. So we know that this works in high-income countries. We have the evidence in the WHO intrapartum care and antenatal care guidelines, and WHO says midwife-led continuity of care models are recommended for pregnant women in settings with well-functioning midwifery programs. But this research was done in a handful of high-income countries. So our question is, how do we do this in low and middle income countries? And that's going to be so important to transform midwifery in these countries. So it's not the chaotic, I'm in a ward and there's 30 women and I'm jumping from one to the other, and there's a cleaner and there's an auxiliary nurse and there's a doctor, and this poor woman has seen lots of people, and we're not saying the same thing. So I'm not going to go through this, but just to let you know, we are developing a theory of change, is what it's called, of how midwife-led care could work. So we identify our problem of poor quality, discontinuous routine care by multiple providers. We've identified 4 areas that need to change. It's not just having a good midwife. You need women and newborn to have access to that care and know their rights. You need the midwives to be educated and to have the organizational support in a network of care. You need the health system to be able to support all of that, and you need the regulation, laws and policy, and then we'll have medium, long, and the actual impact that we know about in high-income countries. So just to let you know that that work is going on, and that is about midwives leading that. And my last point really and I've been talking very fast, so I apologize to people for whom English is not a first language, is that we are great at midwives at tweeting and advocating and saying midwives need respect, and it's fantastic. But what I think we need to see now out of these two reports from last year is that we base our advocacy on strong evidence. And my goodness, since the Lancet series in 2014, these two reports now, we have a lot of evidence. So please, when you advocate, when you tweet, when you talk to people, when you're getting in your countries the body of people you want to support, please use the evidence. It's all out there for you to have. And the wonderful Professor Dilip Mavalanka in India, I like what he said, which is midwifery is not a fashion, it's life-saving. We have to take this really seriously. So we must lead with responsibility to ensure that our advocacy is informed by evidence. Do we have the evidence? Not all of it. Quite difficult to say to a government, just have midwives, because we've never been able to, possibly because it's unethical, do the, to just look at what if you don't have them, or what if you just do have them. So now we really do want all of you on the call to use the evidence. So that's it from me, and a big thank you to all of you listening. I just want to say how much I love this last slide, because this came from a regional conference for Western Pacific countries that was held in Australia. And you can see the placenta in the middle. This is from the midwives from all the Pacific countries who came and drew on this. And it's how they would communicate. And you can see the hands around it, and they're called connecting people. So that's why I like that one. So thank you very much. And I hope that was helpful. All best.
Thank you very much, Fran. That was awesome. I'm really kind of excited by the fact, I think, that throughout your presentation, it was just leadership right at the beginning of every single thing, like education, leadership, even leadership and education, getting that right from the beginning, leading change, leading education that is at the beginning of midwives' career journey, and throughout. We don't stop learning. But yeah, that's just throughout. And I just think there's so much to do. And I do get tired of just saying, we need this, we need that. We need to start thinking about the how now.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking about, yes, we need it. Yes, we know what the problem is. Let's get to fixing that. Let's get to the problem, rather than the problem focus, let's get to the solution focus. So I really like that. Now, I noticed that people were asked to put in the chat if they had any questions, and the recording of today's presentation is going to be available later on the Nursing Now Challenge YouTube channel, which is really useful. But I just wondered if we did have any questions, because I know Fran might not be able to stay for the entire session, so put them in the Q&A box, please, if you have any for Fran. And the next part of our session is going to be focused on a survey that the Midwives Focus team is sharing, and Fran's kindly agreed to share this among her networks, and we're sharing the link to the survey for you today, and we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so giving people an opportunity to actually complete the survey if you so wish. And once we've given time for people to complete the survey, we will be talking about the things raised in the survey in relation to policy, research and clinical practice. So that's what the rest of our session will be about. And if you can share that link with your networks, we wanted to hear as many voices from midwifery as possible around the world. So any midwives and nurse midwives anywhere in the world, please do share this link for the survey to give them the opportunity to contribute to it, because we're sharing it, hopefully the early findings on the International Day of the Midwife, which is May the 5th, and then we'll be publishing the findings as well. So we'll be sharing the findings with Fran, because I'm sure Fran could make use of them in the work of the WHO. So, you know, filling in that survey and getting as many people to fill in that survey will make a difference, or will make a change. Unfortunately, it's only in English, because we didn't have time to do all the translations and the ethical approvals for that. But if you can try and do it, we have tried to make the English language as simple as possible within the survey as much as we can, and share it with colleagues as much as you can as well. And thank you to those who have already done it. I know some of you have. So were there any questions for Fran before we move on to that section? I can't see any, but let me have a look in the Q&A section whether there's one. Okay, so there is one. How have you managed the fact that decisions for midwives are being made by doctors, thinking about the low status of midwifery, particularly in Africa? So I don't know what you want to say about that, Fran.
I want to say that's a really good question. And I think we need to keep asking those questions. And as WHO, we support member states to move in the direction they want and provide the evidence. And I think more and more this idea that midwives can make decisions and can lead is filtering through, but it's up to all of us in all countries to keep making those discussions happen and to be at the table and speak. There is one thing that is really important, is the WHO recommendation is about well-functioning midwifery systems, which require highly qualified midwives to make those decisions. So the issue about education and regulation is critical, because we want to see a transformation, if you like, a transition in countries from, I mean, some countries still don't have a single midwife, and some countries have midwives that lead all care until they need. So there is a transition going on, and it's really important that those decisions are at the right and appropriate part of that transition. So if you have a midwife who's only done 6 months training because it's a nursing course, you wouldn't expect her to lead a midwife-led unit because she won't have the skills and experience to do that. So then you need to move on to your either additional time post-nursing or your direct entry to get that leadership to be able to have the skills and training to do that. What we want is that those midwives just do the best possible job that they can, and not that they take on too much too soon in countries that aren't quite ready and then get blamed by the obstetricians and others for not being good enough, and women's lives are lost. We're not in that battle. We're not proving anything other than that over time we can get better, take more leadership, have better skills and lead. Some countries there already, but many are moving forward. And I know in Africa, the nurse midwife issue, it's a really interesting issue, and countries do have to have those discussions themselves about what's most appropriate for them in their geographical context as much as anything else now, and how would it look like in the next 5 to 10 years. Start thinking forward. So I hope that helps. There's no one answer to that. Good question.
That's a really good question, and I think we all struggle with it, you know, anywhere in the world really. And we're struggling at the moment, like you say, with the Ockenden report that's coming up today, and
yes,
there's some serious difficulties in terms of throwing midwives under the bus in terms of having to say, you know, potentially we're sorry for the mistakes, but also we're learning, and also it's not just our fault, you know.
No. And
it's not midwives' fault.
No, it never is. We work in a team.
Yeah.
We have to take individual responsibility. If I do something wrong, I must take that responsibility, but I work in a team. And working in a team, which is why nursing is nursing, midwifery is midwifery in some countries, but you still need those neonatal nurses when that baby is sick. You still need the pediatrician, and many women will still need the obstetrician. So we've got to have those good team working relationships. So as much as we want to be proud, independent, autonomous midwives, that's fantastic. Have the confidence to be like that in your team. Always important to put the woman and newborn's needs first.
Absolutely. We just got another question, and before I ask the next question, I'm just going to say, please do carry on, keep taking the survey and sharing the survey if you can. We need more responses to get more powerful statistics, so that's really helpful. Thank you for those who are currently completing and sharing that survey in the chat box. But our next question is, what more can we do to promote a strong mentality of leadership within the midwifery profession, right from studentship through to qualification and beyond? So that's for you, Fran.
I think the answer to that is we can do a lot. We haven't yet leadership has really come up in the last few years. And as I mentioned, this work at country level, asking countries what they need is not for somebody like me now, not, you know, sitting in a headquarters to say, this is what you need. It's really about thinking. And I showed you just the first section of those questions. Start to think in your countries, what is it you need? Where are you? And we'll be developing this tool and we'll share it for input, but that should help guide us to think, where do we start from? It's a big issue, building leadership. It's going to take time. And I totally agree that we need to start right from the beginning. This is about the student on her first day, knowing she's going to be a brilliant practitioner, but that takes leadership at many levels as she goes through her career pathway. So it's not just talking about the government chief nursing midwifery officer, it's a team. And she's got great researchers and other people, administrators and thinkers and all sorts of other people around her, as well as the educators and the clinicians. So it's about thinking what you need in your country and starting to move that forward from where you are.
Yeah, I think it's really important to think about leadership at every level as well. Like you say, it's not just, you can't be a leader unless you're right at the top of government.
No.
You're a
Everywhere.
leadership you're leaders as soon as you start becoming a midwife, you're a leader. And actually going back to the survey, one of the things the survey is asking is what does strong midwifery leadership look like? Because people keep saying in all these webinars, you know, we need leadership, we need midwives in leadership, and that's true, of course, and it came through in the SOMI report and everything, that we need those midwives in those posts. But what does strong midwifery leadership look like? How do we embody it? And if someone's sort of saying, I want to be a midwifery leader, like you said, what guidance is there around there as to what that looks like? So we're hoping that once we have these responses, we'll have a kind of themes in relation to what strong midwifery looks like. So if you're looking to embody that, there'll be some kind of guide or benchmark to say, if I display these characteristics or do these things or say these things or wear these clothes or whatever it is, then I will be embodying strong midwifery leadership. So that's also something else we hope to
and look out for that.
From this.
You know, we want to share it and get inputs, but we hope to publish it this year. So at least it would give countries a starting point. It's not, you can change it, you can adapt it, but at least there'll be a reference point that you can go to, which is, where do I start on this thing?
Yeah, and we can keep building on that. We never stop learning, we never stop growing. Like you said, quality improvement is a continuous cycle.
Yeah. So
whatever we've got now, we'll be improving it for the next 50 years and getting it right. And even then we'll be making it better. So that's really something that I find really powerful about these sessions, because we get these midwives in the room, hundreds together from around the world, and we're able to do that together and influence that as a team, which really brings us close together, which is amazing. I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A box, but I don't know if any of the other panel members wanted. Oh, hang on, there's one just popped up just as I said that. So this is from Clara. There are lots of issues in Africa, issues preventing autonomous practice in Africa. What works best in reducing the culture of doctor knows best practice and ending subjugation of midwives in practice? Also, how do we reassure midwives who will not support leadership efforts within their team?
Yeah, very big and very good questions. I think that the Midwives Voices, Midwives Reality Survey, and the 3 areas that we talked about was the first time that we had actually acknowledged that we had these problems, and we'd actually identified that they're just not thousands of things going on. There's actually these socioeconomic, economic, and professional issues. So what works best, it really depends where you are and who you're working with and all the rest of it. But we know, again, well, there's multiple issues, and I you know, this is a whole subject in itself. But if we look at education, interprofessional education is important. Not all the time. Doctors have to learn what they learn, midwives have to learn, but getting to work early on in a team is really, really important. And just having respect for each other. And this toolkit that we do teamwork exercise every day. And you put the woman and newborn at the center, and you say, you're the midwife, but look at all these other people. The guy at the gate who lets you in, the receptionist when you arrive, the person who's responsible for clean water and that clean toilet. We all have to work in a team, not just the doctor and nurse and midwife. And I think it's trying to avoid animosity with doctors. It's difficult sometimes depending on their attitude, and their training often makes them that way. But demonstrating that you do have the skills, working with them and supporting with them, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. But I think just that's why we need the leadership to be able to say, wow, doctor, you did a great job on that, but I'm just interested to know why you did that, because I was trained to do it this way, and can we have a discussion, that kind of thing. So it's a big scale, it's a little scale, it's many things going at once. And I think getting this assessment right, understanding what we mean, we have to bring the doctors on board with us, by the way. They're going to feel threatened that midwives are doing all this leadership work, and it's happening already. They get anxious. They think we're going to be critiquing them. So we have to explain that it is about all of us working together and putting the woman and newborn first. And just over time now, really, I think we made huge strides just by having this meeting today and talking about this, and just that we're starting to develop these tools. If I think even 10 years ago, this wasn't on the agenda. So we are making this progress, but it's hard. And where you work, I know it well. It's really hard, and huge respect for all of you, but just hang on in there and think of what the woman and newborn needs, and just keep thinking leadership the way you are and asking these questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Fran. I just wondered if Dr. Jan had anything to input here on what we've been talking about, and then we'll go to Gila.
Well, I was very impressed, in fact, reassured by these kind of webinars, because the last question which came, everyone has their own struggle in their own country or in their own organization. Believe it or not, I'm sitting at one of the friend also knows very hi-fi educational university, Khan University, which is spread in Africa as well, not just in Pakistan. And here every day, last 15 years, I have been struggling and fighting for midwifery. Yesterday we had, day before yesterday, we had a very huge meeting where all leadership were sitting, and they said, what you midwife do, just put your curriculum with the bachelor's of nursing, and because it's not, and you just listen and you understand. They're not understanding that so you have to patiently listen them. And in the end they were asking, it's not like a business model like obstetricians, or do you want to shut it down? And in the end, I just said to my leadership that midwifery is only program in our university went for 3 times evaluation along with the whole 15 other programs, and one program fulfilled requirement was midwifery. So I said, having said this kind of standards, what we'll do. But I have a good news to share. Always, like Fran says, I continuously advocate. And everywhere when doctors see my face, they said, let's not speak against midwifery because Rafat is here. So it's, it's become like they know everywhere. So even they don't have to say, they start saying, we love midwifery, we love midwives. They don't want me to say anything. But yesterday we had a good news that our president, he's new. And when these discussions were on, he said, why you are all wasting time in this kind of discussion? Midwifery is essential part. We need midwifery. What is the problem starting midwifery-led services? Obstetrician, then give me names. So it's
that's fantastic, Rafat.
So last 15, 20 years of struggle, it's not one day. So we all are jointly, and I must say to nursing now and those who are supporting at the back of the screen, these kind of webinar, like you said, friend, and Dr. Sally and other, just to talk, just to have dialogue, just to share our inner feeling. This is not measurable. These are not evidences, but these are so important. So important. So I would say, please continue it. Don't stop it.
Excellent. Thank you, Rafat. That's really powerful. Someone just said in the chat as well that I think might be a message for everybody. The WHO postnatal guidelines will come out today, apparently.
Yes.
So Fran says, more evidence to advocate for midwifery. Indeed, that's always amazing when a new document comes out that is kind of we can use as a tool of change. That's always amazing. Gila, did you have something to contribute, please? I know you've always got lots of wisdom within you.
First of all, Fran, that was exceptional. That was so succinct and so clear, and it basically touched on all the issues I think that are happening. It was a global conversation. It wasn't something that's specific for each country. Each place can take what they needed from what you said. I know that in Israel there was so much that you said that was applicable directly to our country. I said, oh, I'm going to use that. Oh, I'm going to take that. I'm going to apply that. So thank you. That was an exceptional presentation. And I 100% agree with my colleague Rafat that these webinars to speak on a global scale, first of all, you realize that you're not alone. The issues that we are having in Israel are the issues that the WHO is saying are happening in Africa, or are happening in Pakistan, or happening in America. And that gives you a sense that you're not alone. We have a global community of strong, powerful midwives who are speaking the same language, want the same things, and we need to stand up and make that change. And what Sally always says, we need to be the change. We need to stop waiting for someone to say, when are you going to change midwifery? Well, stand up. let's change it now. It's up to us. We need to be the change. But I want to address some of the things, the comments that are coming out of Africa that were repeating themselves. First of all, I want to tell Africa that I and Israel are experiencing the exact same problems that you are experiencing. I understand that our global resources and our health resources are different, and our experiences are different, but we too, our profession is defined by the physicians. Every time midwives try to make change, it's the people who stop it mainly are the physicians. And this is, I think, something that's happening on a global scale. And my advice or my experience would be, we don't need, I think what Fran was saying, we don't need to start from the top. We can sometimes start from the bottom. All of us need midwives in government. All of us need midwives in research and in leadership positions. Sometimes that conversation starts with just creating a strong midwifery alliance or association in your country. The first thing I think you need to do is get the midwives together. Get the midwives together and start that leadership within the midwives in your country. We in Israel are having very soon a countrywide midwifery seminar where my job will be to speak about midwifery continuity of care to all the midwives in the country, because we need to first make sure that all of us are speaking the same language, that all the midwives know what midwifery continuity of care is and what our scope of practice should be. So that would be my first step that I would recommend to countries that are struggling with issues up here. You first, create the baseline down here, and like what Fran was saying, then we'll tackle education, then we'll tackle the leadership, then we'll tackle the government. And we're seeing these changes on the ground globally and in small countries as well. So I wish us all good luck, because we're all in the same boat. And if we don't stand up, then nobody will. Thank you so much.
That's so true, Gila. And that's why we're doing this work, I think, Midwives in Focus, just taking it and going, yeah, let's do this, which is so awesome to have so many of you on board. And people are saying in the chat that Rafat, you've energized them to continue the struggle with your words. And everyone's saying, well said, it's true, Gila, we're all on the same page here. So I think it's really important that we keep moving forward with this. And again, thank you for everybody who's completing the survey and sharing the survey, because that will help us in our journey with your voices to continue that. And someone has also emailed me about the survey. I'll get back to you after the webinar about that. And then people saying thank you for organising this, it's very useful, but it's not over yet. We have not finished. Next, now we hope you've had a little bit of a chance to look at the survey, complete the survey, or maybe you want to do it after the webinar or share it with your colleagues. We're going to go into breakout rooms, which will allow us to discuss the issues raised in the survey. So strong midwifery leadership, representations of midwifery and professional identity. And we're going to be looking at those three things in light of policy, clinical practice and research. I don't think we've yet got Professor Sarah Bayes with us, because I think she was held up on a travel issue, was preventing her from getting here. So I will take her session. There's links in the chat now. It's going to take a little while for everyone to get there, but if you go to the breakout rooms via that link, there will be an opportunity to go to speak with someone about leadership and professional identity in terms of research, same with policy and the same with clinical practice. So if we can get into the breakout rooms now, everybody, and then at the end we'll come back to have some final thoughts. But hopefully